Good morning.
Good morning.
Dr. David Haddad on our faculty in the Department of Counseling, and a man that wears many hats very successfully here at William James College. I'd love to hear some of the psychological principles that guide your work. Love to hear some tales from your work, and I would love to hear more about the service project, how you and Dr. Fialkov got engaged. And it's very fresh because you've been back from Kenya for just
1 week or 2 weeks. 2 weeks now, yeah.
2 weeks. So please.
Yeah. Dr. Fialkov and I have been colleagues for over 30 years. We began our training together in family and systems therapy back in Cambridge in the 1980s. So we have a long history of working together in kind of larger systems work. So how we became involved in the work in Kenya, that we had been doing some work with Appreciative Inquiry and working, and we were contracted to do some work with Population Services International, and they were located in Lesotho. And so it was that introduction that kind of led us to working in Africa. And from that led us to other relationships where we ended up having some work with Farm Africa, which is located in Nairobi. That led us to a relationship with the Chemo Wellness Foundation, which is an organization, an NGO in Nairobi that we became connected to, and really kind of nurtured and partnered with to help them get the necessary legal requirements that allowed us to partner with them. That we couldn't do work with them unless they were a registered NGO. And so we helped them kind of get through that process and became a registered NGO. And from that, we started looking for a project together that we could work with. And we began by working in a school system. They identified a couple of schools that they wanted us to work with. And our interest has been in large-scale, kind of sustainable resources. That how does a community come together and sustain resources in service of, in this case, we're using hygiene prevention, hand washing, in the service of helping kids to be able to perform better in school. And we had identified the idea that wellness and education were tied together, hygiene and wellness were connected. And so we developed a curriculum that was based on the Positive Psychology's Values and Action Survey, which is the Cultivation of Strengths. And we developed a curriculum that we took the teachers through in Kenya. We took the chemo staff through, and then so we were able to identify their strengths, their character strengths, which we used as part of a team building approach. And then when we went there, we did the students. We took the students through the same curriculum. And so they developed a lexicon for being able to talk about strengths. And then part of that was also where the kids go home and interview the parents about their strengths. And it all culminates where we have a large community meeting where the whole community comes together and we talk about kind of the strengths, the origin of their strengths. And so it becomes this really enriching kind of community event where the strengths of the community and the strengths of the members of the community become much more visible, which is quite consistent with the village, collective, thinking in Kenya anyway.
So this is a very rich and very exciting project.
Yeah.
I'd like to step back a moment. We have many different viewers, and some will immediately recognize appreciative inquiry as a construct and positive psychology. Others, these are new concepts too.
Sure.
So could you define those two important concepts?
Yeah. Appreciative inquiry came out of organizational development, and it was developed by a guy named David Cooperrider, where traditional organizational development looks to diagnose what's going on in an organization and then seeks to create an intervention that then goes in and is applied to the organization. Appreciative inquiry begins with the premise that organizations are resources waiting to be discovered. And so from that perspective, the goal is to simply identify the best of organizations. So the questions, as opposed to gather information, the questions from Appreciative Inquiry's perspective are really are the intervention. You ask questions to illuminate what you want more of. So if you want to know about their strengths, you ask them questions about time when they were successful. And so what positive psychology has done has been able to kind of demonstrate scientifically a lot of the constructs that appreciative inquiry had been kind of using, that as opposed to a deficit model, a holistic model, and also the benefit of kind of positivity and strengths as a way of kind of organizing kind of resources and people within the organization.
And the positive psychology movement has gained tremendous traction in the last 15 or plus or 20 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
Could you say a bit more about positive psychology?
Positive psychology really has looked at, well, how do we really measure that? And how do we develop organizations that foster kind of those positive principles? And so I think it has gained sort of momentum because it kind of brings together the best in kind of faculty who are wanting to teach it and teams that are attempting to use it, and that has been able to be kind of demonstrated scientifically in a variety of sort of measures. Probably the most repeated sort of positive psychology intervention has been the 3 good things, the gratitude journal, where people keep track of 3 things that they're grateful for each day for a period of 6 weeks, and then they've seen that the benefit of that is extended for 1 month after, 6 months after, and a year later, people are still thinking, about the gratitude, the things that they're grateful for in their life. So I think it really has gained lots of momentum, and we've been incidentally kind of applying that a lot in kind of the classrooms here at William James, I think.
Let me follow up on that. So how have you been applying it in your teaching right here?
Well, I think that routinely, whatever the course I teach, we always do an appreciative inquiry where we ask people to reflect on the strengths, one, that they feel like they've gotten from the course, and then asking them to kind of articulate examples of that. So they would break into small groups and dyads and interview each other about the strengths that they've gained and what strengths they bring to the course that have allowed them to be successful. So they tell those stories to partners, and then they share those stories with a larger group. So in that way, we get a chance to, I think, kind of circulate the kind of wisdom, and people get seen in their best self in that way. And so I think in that way, it not only enhances the kind of individual experience, but certainly the experience of everybody, including the teachers.
I'm thinking about positive psychology's origins in the American Academy, in American universities, and as well as appreciative inquiry coming out of American think tank, an American think tank, if you will. And so here you're going to rural Kenya, a very different culture, very different set of societal norms and mores. What's it like to take these first world developed country ideas into rural Kenya?
We actually start with a community meeting where we introduce ourselves to the community, saying this is what we're going to be doing, and we invite them to kind of tell stories about the values of education and what they value about education. So it really begins with the stories, because it's the very kind of tribal communities that the chief comes and kind of offers their blessings and kind of tells stories about why this is important to their community. So it really is translated very easily, I think, to the community. And I would say every official along the way offers their blessing. The kind of the pomp and the circumstance associated with coming into the community is really important, where we might, or certainly I would feel, come on, let's get this going. There was so much time, you just had to kind of relax. This is Africa time, and that was a really important part for them to kind of welcome us into the community, to offer us tea, and all of those things that are associated with their communities.
I would underscore that your work is very planful and well conceived, and you simply don't go for a summer experience or a summer intervention, but the work is ongoing throughout the year.
Yeah. This is happening alongside of a grant that we have from Procter & Gamble. And the Procter & Gamble grant is for water sanitation. Procter & Gamble provides us with these water purification packets that allows communities to be able to kind of clean their water, 10 liters a day each day, and we distribute them to 400 families, enough for a year. And why that's important in school is because dysentery is one of the leading reasons why kids aren't going to school. And so we've been able to work with the ministries of health, and we have the Chemo Foundation goes into the communities and kind of tracks how people are using them. So we have a large-scale training. In addition to what's happening in the school, we have a large-scale training in the community where we teach people about how to use these packets and then distribute the packets to them. And then over the course of the year, people are coming back to get further distribution 3 or 4 times a year. They're getting that. So we maintain contact with them. We also provided water with the schools, and so water purification in the schools, and teach the kids how to do it. And the kids really become the people who are really teaching their parents. They go home and they're teaching their parents how to do that. So what we've been seeing is the value of well-being tied to water purification and hand washing, tied to education within the cultivation of strength. So they really kind of work hand in hand. And we've been getting some great support from Procter & Gamble in Kenya from this as well.
So every year, important part of your work is that you are training the next generation of mental health providers. And every year you take a group of doctoral and master's students. Do you have a story or two for us about some of the learnings that the students report back to you and to Claire?
We spend time, we have a day-long prep before we go to Kenya, and it's really about going over identifying the strengths of the students. We give them the via, so we help them to identify their strengths and ask them to be intentional about what's their intention, about what strengths they want to cultivate while they're in Kenya. And then they're also recharged with working with certain classrooms, and they're going to go in and be able to do this curriculum. And one of the things they're always kind of quite anxious about is, well, how am I going to do this curriculum? You know, that we talk about this, but I'm going to go over that. I'm going to be responsible for doing this curriculum. And what we found kind of routinely is once they meet the kids, they're just kind of uplifted, and they are able to kind of bring their own unique kind of character strengths to their work with the students. And each of the students, I think, find the experience quite moving. When we finished up, I mean, our experience has been this way for the last 2 years, that the students that they're leaving are in tears, and our students are in tears because of the great connections that they fostered with the kids. It's quite different when we think about traditional kind of mental health interventions.
Yes.
This is kind of large-scale kind of community, and it's so rewarding. And I think many of these students have an interest in working kind of internationally or working with international communities. So it's a great opportunity, I think, for them.
So having rolled up your sleeves and done this work for a number of years now, what do you envision? What are next steps for you and Claire in your work?
One of the things that we've been working on in Kenya, that we have our curriculum approved by the Kenyan Department of Education for curriculum development, and one of the potentials is to have our curriculum rolled out countrywide on social and emotional well-being. That's been part of the United Nations kind of global set of development goals to include social and emotional well-being. And our curriculum has been piloted in these schools. They're looking at our curriculum as one possibility of being able to use and roll out. And so we see the schools that we're working with as, if you will, pilot programs for the Kenyan Minister of Education, and also the Chemo Wellness Foundation, who we're partnering with. It becomes kind of trainers. So we see the opportunity to continue to kind of grow this and maybe move it into other communities, you know, not just in Tikas in what's called Maranga County. And so it would be moving it outside of Maranga County to other parts of Kenya.
Your work is under a particular tent here at the college, which is the Center for Multicultural and Global Mental Health. And could you spend a moment just describing what kind of goals that center has and how your work fits into that center?
Well, I think the center's goal at its heart is to prepare clinicians to be able to work with kind of diverse communities. Whether that's international, certainly we see now at community mental health centers, it's really a global community with so much migration in the world that students are working internationally. And at the heart of it is to, in some ways, kind of go in with kind of as a curious, taking a position of curiosity without the idea you feel like you kind of know what's going on. And there's no place to experience that more than when you go into another culture. And there's something about being, you know, in Kenya more than any place in the world, like for, you know, no matter who you are, we're the only kind of, you know, for many American faces, white faces in the community. And so you feel that you're a visitor in their communities. And so that kind of attitude, that mindset is really important, that you're a visitor and all the things that go along with being a welcome, invited guest into somebody's home. And I think that students are able to see, and I think the Center for also sees that we're fostering that kind of curiosity. And out of that curiosity comes these partnerships that lead to such incredible things.
In terms of your personal growth and development, what particularly sticks to your ribs after a number of visits now to Kenya and your work in Kenya?
The goal of this project is really to kind of be the best version of yourself. So you can't do it intellectually. You have to be it. You have to do it together with each other. And so that's what we did. You know, each day we process with the students, and each day we talk about the challenges that we're all facing. And so I appreciate being part of a community and with students that are so willing to do that, with their professors, that to just engage you. And I think that the center and William James College has really supported that, incredibly. And so just to feel that we're part of this kind of generative kind of movement has been so exciting.
So we're about to wrap up. I'm very grateful to you. Any final reflections?
I feel kind of so thankful for being able to have an opportunity to do this kind of work with the people that we do it with, and in a community that's so supportive and welcoming. Thank you.
Many thanks, David.
Thank you.
For more information about the faculty members interviewed today and the topic of discussion, please follow these links.